evening, everybody, ladies and gentlemen. Today evening, it's not Mr. Bottin who is welcoming you. The French Embassy, Institut Français en Inde, is very pleased to welcome you at the Alliance Française of Delhi for this writers, etc. You know, it's a collaborative project between the Embassy and the Alliance Française, and it's now a very important writers, etc. for us, because we are welcoming Ananda Devi.
I am honored and privileged to have Ananda Devi here in conversation. And, so let me begin by asking you, Ananda, you studied in Mauritius in English in your primary and secondary school. However, you chose French, which was your second language in school, but you chose French as your language of writing. So what dictated this choice? At what time did this happen? And are you happy with your choice? Because I know you're equally comfortable in English.
Two languages of reading that I first used were English and French, but somehow as a child, maybe around the age of 7, I started writing in French. So I wrote poetry, fairy tales, I drew cartoons, and I used to make my little books, you know, and staple them and illustrate them, and it was sort of, it grew up with me, and somehow I think French had some kind of resonance maybe in my way of thinking, or maybe the musicality of it. It remained from that time onwards. So throughout my life, it has never been a question in a way. It maybe chose me in a way rather than me
kind of a natural progression towards the language. I think the example is also what you cited is shared by some writers from Maghreb as well, who have Arabic and French as both the languages at their disposition, and who do find French liberating. So I mean, I suppose it works in different ways. Ananda, most of the time you have been identified as a Mauritian writer, right? Now, I don't mean just your identity as a person, but as a writer. How do you respond to that? And because you did start writing about Mauritian characters, or about, you know, the flora, the fauna in Mauritius. So Mauritius was really a backdrop for many of your works.
Yeah.
So how do you look at it today? Because there has been a shift.
You know, sort of be bounded by any kind of label, and it's complicated, because of course you're writing as yourself, so you have these identities. I'm not saying that these are not part of me, but what comes out should not have any labels. It should be able to touch somebody from India, or somebody from France, or somebody from anywhere else in the world. And I think that the need to categorize writers according to their nationality or region or whatever is more sort of to do with maybe publishers finding the place to put you in and from which to publicize your work. Booksellers also need to, you know, they always do that. They put literature from such a country, from this country or that country. When people, or especially critics or journalists, read your work only from that prism, and then try to see something like sort of an anthropological study of Mauritius, for example, in a book, whereas I'm writing fiction. It's not anthropology, and this can go to some extreme. For example, when Pugly was published, and there's a scene which is completely sort of in a kind of dream or sort of non-realistic setting.
But the choice of Pugly as a title, the fact that you kept that, and Gallimard sort of kept it as well. What was the reaction in France or in elsewhere? Because in India, I mean, it's natural. You hear Pugly and you know what that means.
I know. Actually,
it sound Italian to some people, or any
it did sound Italian, and some pronounced it a bit in the Italian way. And this is, you know, just to tell you about the problems of translation. when I chose that title in French, I wanted it to sound strange. Obviously, they wouldn't know what it was about until they read it and understood it. So it changed from the kind of exotic or exoticizing writing that was happening in the sort of earlier, sort of 20, 30, 40 years ago, where those writing from the margins needed to explain everything because they were writing for a reader from the center, you know. So whereas this has changed very much with sort of, you know, with time, with new generations of writers, where now they say, no, we're writing from our place, so you reader have to make the journey back towards us. And in Pugly, most of the all the titles are in French and Creole, and there are some dialogue in Creole without translation. Yeah. So in a way, I'm telling the French also that Creole is, the Mauritian Creole is 90% based on French words. So in a way, if you read it aloud, at some point you have to make the step to try to understand what it is, because it's part of your history as well. But so there was this whole...
Your novels is the dark side, also where the characters wear the burden of the Indian identity, you know. So we find that is a recurrent theme in many of the novels, or at least of the first cycle. And so my question would be that would it be possible to write about I'm using the term Indo-Mauritian because again it's very complicated. Diaspora is extremely problematic to me because I feel that 4 generations of, you know, people who lived in another country can't be called the Indian diaspora. They are Mauritians in their own right. Okay. So that's problematic. And to talk of Indo-Mauritians maybe at one level, then maybe that's a better term. So my question is it possible to speak about an Indo-Mauritian character or a family without falling into this trap of this burden of tradition? Because I find that is something that weighs a lot in most of the works, whether it's Walde Draupadi, whether it is La Fouet, or whether it is in Pugly, or even for that matter in Moi l'Interdite.
Yeah, again, yes, the Paradise Island is as much of a myth as you know, everything else that you know, that the Mauritian sort of government promotes tourism, and obviously they have to promote the image of this idyllic tropical island where everybody lives, you know, together. It's sort of a small world, a microcosm of the world in you know, in miniature. But in reality, you know, when you just delve a little bit, you scratch the surface, you know that it's not like that. There's a lot of tension. And what really sort of makes me sometimes feel aghast when I look at Mauritian society is that after 300 years, these components of society have been living together in that small island, which is sort of 2,000 square kilometers, you know, large or small, and they're still categorizing themselves through this ancestral identity. Now, I'm not saying that you have to lose it, because I wear the sari. You know, I feel very proud of that component of my identity. But I also know that in my writing, I'm very close also to the writers from the African continent, of course, from the French, you know, sort of tradition of writing. So all this does make up Mauritian identity.
Ananda, would you like to read an extract from Sariware or something?
Yeah, well,
would you like to do?
I'll read an extract in French. I apologize for those who don't, but I think this is the voice, and you know, it's good to hear it. And it's the end of a novel that's completely written in the first person by an 80-year-old man who's almost a monster of you know, contempt for women, of violence towards 3 generations of women, and who is on his deathbed. But even on his deathbed, his voice and his personality is so strong that he manages to subjugate or subject the women around him just to his voice and his words, until you know, in the end, they sort of managed to find women and despising them. And it was a very violent sort of voice which was inhabiting me for many months. So in the end, the very final chapter, I give voice back to the women. And what they say is that they're looking at him, he's dead now, and they're looking at him and they think, is that what we were afraid of? Food for worms and maggots? And this is what we were afraid of. And they see him decaying and they're thinking, in a way, he was violent, yes, but they also allowed him, in a way, they allowed him they allowed him to oppress them because of their fear. And fear is something that oppresses us ourselves, in a way. So I'll read that bit in French. Au-dessus du corps immobile se penchent 3 femmes. Leur visage est amusé, leur sourire joyeux. Elles ne se touchent pas, mais il frémit entre elles une ondulation de sympathie. Chacune examine une partie précise du corps. La main, le visage, les parties génitales, les genoux. Les signes de la dégradation presque instantanée qui a eu lieu après la mort sont visibles dans toutes ces zones. Elles sont très intéressées. Elles sont comme des scientifiques se penchant sur un microscope, comme si elles s'attendaient à voir une chose jamais vue, à faire une découverte qui changerait le monde. 2 d'entre elles posent des questions, l'une après l'autre. Où se situe le centre de son humanité? Où se trouve le cœur de sa méchanceté? Où commence le début du pardon? Où finit l'individu? Est-ce bien lui, là, ou est-ce autre chose? À quoi a-t-il servi? Le corps, un peu outré de cette manipulation sans complexe, ne dit rien. La 3e femme, la plus âgée, la plus jeune aussi parce qu'elle est morte à 20 ans, sourit mais ne répond pas. Elle passe pensivement la main sur le front jauni, sur les chairs qui déjà se disloquent. Elle appuie légèrement et cela semble fondre sous la pression. Ce que je sais, dit-elle, c'est que c'est là tout ce qu'il reste de ma peur. Les autres hochent la tête, atterrées par cette évidence. Elles ont eu peur de rien. Le petit tyran sera bientôt un grouillement d'asticots. Elles ont eu peur d'une nourriture pour insectes. Elles éclatent toutes de rire en même temps. Elles se ressemblent, mère, fille, petite fille, ou autre chose, sœur peut-être, aïeule, aux progénitures, aucune importance dans l'ordre des choses, aucune importance à l'aune de leur temps. Elles croient saisir l'éternité. Leur retrouvaille dans la maison déserte, dont les murs sont si bien rongés par les termites que dans 10 jours très exactement elle s'écroulera sur elle-même, sont une occasion de fête, une fête comme aucune n'en a connue avant. 2 d'entre elles ont vu leur ombre massacrée. La plus jeune, elle, a eu une opportunité d'amour qu'elle a saisie à bras-le-corps. Une fête, oui, elles y ont bien droit, pour une fois. Un peu de champagne, pourquoi pas, pour ces reines mystérieuses et furibondes, assises ou flottantes autour d'un corps qui s'effrite, riant à chaque partie qui tombe, jusqu'à ce que la plus jeune s'en aille pour recommencer à vivre, que la plus vieille s'efface pour enfin apprécier sa mort, et que toutes les 2 disent à celle du milieu, comme un regret, « Je suis désolée, mais il le faut », et qu'il ne reste plus que celle du milieu, qui, comme tous ceux du milieu, ne peut ni partir, ni rester, ni sourire, ni pleurer, ni oublier, ni se souvenir, ni fermer la porte, ni l'ouvrir toute grande. Silencieuse et immobile, elle regarde le point final de ses blessures. « Il n'y a qu'un nom pour la violence, père, dit-elle. C'est la violence. » Voilà.
Thank you, Ananda. Would you like to read us an extract in English?
Yeah.
Is it from the Indian Tangle?
Indian Tangle. So there are 2 main characters in this novel. So the chapters are written in alternately for about one character and then the other. So the one who says I is a writer, a foreign writer who comes to India because to try to find back an inspiration that the writer has lost. And so it's at the same time a story about these characters, but also a story about writing. So I'll just read a small passage. It can happen that the darkness of writing catches up with us. Don't ask me how or why, I just know, that's all. I know the words we write sometimes take that risky step across the boundary between the imagined and the real, and then they explode in our faces. I know that when you keep on sticking your nose into mud, you wind up dirty, forgetting that you've always interpreted everything through the mind, looking up and seeing the object of your hatred or your passion. You forget they were part of a book a moment ago. You can't tell the difference anymore. We have so rarely judged the monsters born of our imagination that you are incapable of judging what you have become. I don't know why we follow these particular paths. On the surface, it's because we're exploring the obscure and unmentionable twists and turns of the human soul, exposing its weakness and violence to alert people to their own faults. But is that really the case? Beneath the well-intentioned rationality, isn't there a lurking desire to poke at the ulcers, to open wounds, to go looking for our own shadows? Why not just admit our fascination with all this darkness, our Faustian pact with something that's stronger than we are and leads us to climb into the monster's skin? That would be the easiest and surest way of giving free rein to our impulses, all the while making ourselves look good in the role of messengers from the shadows. To be honest, I wanted for once to go through the barrier, to live the life of my characters and get right to the heart of myself, to send myself, a person who never puts myself on display, through the mirror of fiction. I found my answer in Bimala. She is at one and at the same time a woman and a character, an image and a reality. I watch her living the way I've watched and followed all my characters, not entirely sure anymore if what I'm living is true or if I'm in some kind of fictional parallel dimension. But I do know that soon, very soon, I'm going to cross the impossible frontier. I'll escape from the page to grab hold of her, and it will be the most brutal, the most burning contact ever. Real life will never offer me such abundance. What will happen to me when I lay hands on her will be so final. There'll be no possibility of going back. I will have conquered death.
Thank you.
Thank you for all your words about literature, about your life. Thank you for sharing with us this privacy. It was wonderful and very moving. Thank you very much, and thank you for the time with you in Jaipur, in Kolkata. It was wonderful to meet you. Thank you to the audience. I think you have enjoyed it.